Focus on Headline. All right, let's take a look at what major issues are making the headlines today on Focus on Headline. And for this, joining us in the studio together for the first time in a while, I think, the Sochi sisters back. Kwon-swa, Choi-ji-hee. Guys, welcome back.
Good evening.
Good evening to you guys. We're going to start things off with a number of trials that are taking place. But first, on the 10th impeachment trial hearing on President Yoon over at the Constitutional Court, for now, it is the last one. I don't think we have any updates on whether or not there's going to be any additional hearings so far. If you remember last week, the 8th was supposed to be the last one until the last minute. The court decided that they're going to include some additional witness testimonies and extend it to 10 hearings. The 10th hearing took place today. 3 key witnesses in attendance. You're going to start us off, Soa, with this. Let's get into the 10th and maybe the final impeachment trial hearing.
Right, maybe. You never know. Now, the 10th impeachment hearing started at 3 p.m. this Thursday. It was delayed from the initially scheduled 2 p.m. as there were calls for a postponement from President Yoon Suk-yeol's side due to the criminal court trial he had in the morning. That one we will deal with in a bit. So today's examinations began with Prime Minister Han Duck-soo a little past 3 p.m., who was impeached on December 14th over his alleged role in Yoon's martial law declaration. And that was followed by former First Deputy Director of the National Intelligence Service, Hong Jang-won, at 5 p.m. and Cho Ji-ho, Commissioner General of the National Police Agency. He's scheduled to be questioned for 7 p.m. Now, Hong Jang-won had made claims in an earlier hearing that there was a list of 14 to 16 people that Yoon was seeking to arrest under martial law, and that he believes he was ordered to help counterintelligence command in detaining these figures. Cho Ji-ho, meanwhile, was absent at 2 hearings earlier over health issues, but this time he did mention that he is going to be there. He had said Yoon ordered him to arrest lawmakers on the night the martial law was called upon, and heard of 15 names from the counterintelligence commander to detain. We will have to wait for today's session to come to a close before we know more, but for now, no additional hearings have been designated, so it may be the final procedure before the Constitutional Court makes a decision on the president's removal or reinstatement. And that ruling probably is to be made in the first half of next month. It could be even early March or mid-March. We'll have to see.
Yeah, so the way that the scheduling is put in place right now, so I mentioned the 3 key witnesses that are scheduled for today, and the last being Cho Ji-ho, right? The Commissioner General of the National Police Agency. He's slated for 7 p.m., which means that every witness gets something like two hours, I believe, and maybe there might be some breaks in between. So 9 p.m. is a little bit too late for, let's say, final statements. There was questions about whether or not there's going to be final statements coming in from either the Yoon side or the National Assembly's legal team. It's too late. So they're probably going to set up a different date for that. Sometime next week is the consensus right now. And just like Soa mentioned, if you look into previous impeachment trials with former presidents in Park Geun-hye and Roh Moo-hyun, it took about 2 weeks of deliberation, right? So and you put that all together, it's probably like sometime in like mid-March is what they're saying here. But President Yoon Suk-yeol's legal team stated that the president will accept the Constitutional Court's ruling on his impeachment trial. I don't think there's any other options other than that, but the team has raised concerns about the fairness of the proceedings as the trial nears its conclusion. This is not the first time. In fact, they have even challenged the fairness of not just the justices, but even the constitutionality of the Constitution Court justices. Ji-hee, let's get more on this.
Right. So on Wednesday, President Yoon's legal representative Seok Dong-hyun told reporters in Seoul that the president would naturally accept the Constitutional Court's ruling regardless of the outcome. Seok emphasized that there was no scenario where the president would not accept the decision, but stressed that the ruling should be fair and lawful. While expressing respect for the judicial process, Yoon's legal team reiterated their concerns over what they see as procedural flaws in the impeachment trial. And they criticized the court's decision to accept witness statements from prosecutors as evidence, as well as the scheduling of hearing dates without consultation and the alleged failure to fully guarantee Yoon's right to participate in witness questioning. Seok also clarified comments made by another defense attorney, Yoon Gap-gun, who had previously mentioned the possibility of a major decision. And Seok explained that this referred to a potential collective resignation of Yoon's legal team, not an early resignation by the president himself. Additionally, Seok alleged bias within the court, claiming that members of the progressive-leaning Uri Law Research Society held key roles in the impeachment process. He specifically named acting Constitutional Court Chief Justice Moon Hyung-bae and other figures with ties to the group. And Seok argued that the trial must not serve to realize political ideologies. The defense team also questioned the validity of the criminal investigation against Yoon, claiming that the Corruption Investigation Office overstepped its authority and that prosecutors violated detention limits. And with the trial nearing its final phase, Yoon's legal team maintains that they will accept the verdict but continue to push for a fair and impartial process.
So again, I mean, we've talked about this with our legal experts, multiple legal experts in our program, but it's not the best of the plan for Yoon's legal team to start bashing on the justices, right? It's not the best of their favor. It's not in the greatest of their favor to start attacking the prosecution, maybe the CIO, all of which are going to be handing in evidences during the criminal court trials. But they did mention Yoon's right to participate in witness questioning. Now, if you remember, Yoon was initially allowed to take part in witness questioning. However, the reason why that was taken away was during the witness testimony of former Defense Minister Kim Yong-hyun, where President Yoon seemingly kind of tossed questions that were supposed to get answered. They were trying to match the answers together, right? It's kind of like, hey, remember on the night of December 3rd where I didn't really do anything? Remember? Like, you can't be asking questions like that, right? And so it seems like they were plotting together, and the court justices basically said, Yoon, you're not allowed to ask questions like that where it goes into your favor, and you can't be plotting stuff like this, and then removed him from allowing him to ask questions to the witnesses. So again, they made the decision. That's only fair there. We're also going to be talking about Prime Minister Han Duck-soo. We have a number of court trials to look at here. This, of course, being the impeachment trial as well at the Constitutional Court. So we did briefly talk about yesterday being the first day, the first formal hearing of the impeachment trial against the Prime Minister. Let's get a rundown on that, as well as any updates on Han's remarks during the 10th hearing for President Yoon.
Right. So yesterday, Wednesday, was the first, but also the only hearing on the impeachment trial of Prime Minister Han Duck-soo. So he attended the Constitutional Court's main courtroom at 2 p.m. yesterday. So that is some 54 days after the Parliament's impeachment motion was submitted against Han on December 27th. Now, 5 reasons were presented by the National Assembly's legal team for impeaching Han, including that he didn't halt the president from using his veto right and didn't respond appropriately to Yoon's martial law declaration, as well as for not appointing a constitutional court justice that was recommended by Parliament. The Prime Minister apologized to the public for failing to persuade Yoon. He said, quote, "I tried to assist the president overcome difficult situations at home and abroad, but I couldn't persuade him to make a different choice." But he denied his legal responsibility, arguing he did not know of the plans beforehand. Regarding the appointment of a justice at the Constitutional Court, he said it wasn't appropriate in his role as acting president. Now, the court wrapped up the only hearing yesterday, and Han's sentence is expected to come out as early as next month. Now, meanwhile, back to today's 10th round impeachment trial regarding Yoon Suk-yeol. There, Prime Minister Han was said that all the cabinet members were concerned regarding President Yoon and tried to dissuade him. Let me just read out his quote. "As I recall, all cabinet cabinet members were concerned and tried to dissuade him. And also, I want to mention that President Yoon and Prime Minister Han were not in attendance together at the 10th hearing today. Yoon did appear at the courtroom, but left around 3:05 p.m. As I mentioned, the hearing started at 3 today, and then he returned to the Seoul Detention Center. And according to Yoon's legal team, this was kind of because of kind of inappropriateness for Yoon to watch the Prime Minister testifying. So maybe because of reasons of dignity.
Yeah, so, I wouldn't be surprised if there was a number of cabinet members that tried to stop Yoon from actually declaring this martial law. Because if you look at the timeline, now the frustrating thing about all this is that there's no minutes from that cabinet meeting, right? Normally when you have these cabinet meetings, you have minutes, right? You have exactly what people are saying and all that stuff, how long they talked about. They don't have minutes, apparently. I don't know if they did actually have a minute and they just got rid of it or something like that and just got rid of the evidence. But however, what we do know is that meeting itself before the emergency martial law declaration was announced, the meeting lasted like 5 minutes or something like that, 5 or 10 minutes, which means there was not a whole lot of discussion that was going on. So number one, you go, okay, did the cabinet members really try to dissuade him enough during that short period of time? Number two, is it one of those cases where we've heard that where Yoon just kind of bulldozes through his policies and his ways, right? And he doesn't let anyone else talk or try to dissuade him or stop him from doing what he wants, is apparently some of the things that was some people within his administration had talked about in the past. So again, they can easily say they tried to dissuade him, but was it enough? But we do know that there were also other key cabinet members, potentially, again, the defense minister, former interior minister, who probably didn't do much to dissuade Yoon.
Speaking of the defense minister, also Prime Minister Han was asked about former defense minister Kim Yong-hyun's testimony, because Kim had said that some members were actually in favor of Yoon's plan. And Han, according to Han said, from what I recall, that was not the case at all. So yeah. The Prime Minister says what he said today. The gist is that all cabinet members were not for that move.
Which, I mean, I wonder if that goes in favor of Yoon or not, right? That's kind of like also throwing Yoon under the bus, going like, listen, no one thought this was a good idea. Only you thought it was a good idea, which then the National Assembly's legal team might argue then, why wasn't it a good idea? Why did you guys try to dissuade Yoon from pulling off all this? Was there any mention of people being arrested and stuff? Was there any question of whether or not this was unconstitutional? All of this is going to be talked about during the deliberation, I'm sure. Today, again, another big day for Korea's history, and it's not necessarily because of positive things. The first criminal trial preliminary hearing for President Yoon. He is the first sitting president to face a criminal trial, attend a criminal trial as well. He is facing charges of leading an insurrection, not to mention power abuse. This concluded, by the way, swiftly. Less than 15 minutes was what it took. Usually preliminary hearings don't really last that long in the first place. Separate hearing on Yoon's detention appeal followed. Jihee, let's get the updates of this.
Sure. So on Thursday, the Seoul Central District Court held the first pre-trial hearing for President Yoon's criminal trial on insurrection charges in connection with his short-lived martial law declaration. Now, the session began at 10 a.m. and ended only after 13 minutes. During the hearing, Yoon's legal team refrained from stating whether the president acknowledged the prosecution's charges. His lawyer explained that they had not fully reviewed the case records, making it difficult to confirm Yoon's position on the charges. And also, Yoon's defense did not clarify their stance on merging his trial with that of former Defense Minister Kim Yong-hyun, who is also accused of involvement in the alleged insurrection. Prosecutors, however, opposed consolidating the cases, arguing that each defendant's level of involvement and stance differed. They instead suggested conducting parallel hearings while keeping the cases procedurally separate. The prosecution further requested that the court hold intensive hearings 2 to 3 times per week, citing the significance of the case. And they also revealed that they had submitted approximately 70,000 pages of documentary evidence. Following the brief trial session, the court proceeded with a separate review of President Yoon's request to cancel his detention. Yoon was present in court during his hearing, which lasted approximately 1 hour and 10 minutes, and his defense team argued that his indictment on January 26th exceeded the legal detention period, which they claim expired on the 24th of the same month. The court announced it would accept additional written opinions from the prosecution and Yoon's legal team over the next 10 days before reaching a decision. While no specific date was provided, the ruling on Yoon's detention appeal is expected sometime next month. And the next pre-trial hearing for Yoon's criminal trial is scheduled for March 24th, after which the formal trial is expected to begin.
Yeah, so this is going to be very different from the impeachment trial at the Constitutional Court, where the Constitutional Court, I believe, has something like 180 days? 180 days in order to finish completely. Now, it's not going to take 180 days. Whereas with the criminal trial, you're going to have the first trial take place, and once there's a ruling, and I don't know what the ruling is going to be, obviously, there's going to be the appeals trial, and once the appeal trial is over, I'm pretty sure this is going to go all the way to the Supreme Court, and then the Supreme... This might take years. It really is, and it's very different from former President Park Geun-hye, where it didn't take years and years and years. But this is a completely different trial with so much complicated things to deal with, I guess, legally here. And so we'll have to see how things go from now. But we know that the maximum punishment can be as much as a death sentence, which is kind of like done and over with. That practically doesn't exist. What he's probably looking at is life sentence for his alleged insurrection. Four-way discussions between the government, the rival political parties, was set to be held this afternoon on pending issues such as the semiconductor law, where they just can't seem to find the middle ground on. So the meeting should be underway as we speak?
That is highly likely, as the meeting, dubbed the joint consultative body between the government and the National Assembly, between acting President Choi Sang-mok, National Assembly Speaker Woo Won-sik, ruling People Power Party interim leader Kwon Young-se, and main opposition Democratic Party leader Lee Jae-myung, was to start at 5 p.m., so just a little over an hour ago. But what we are expecting is talks on the so-called Semiconductor Special Act, which aims to exempt workers in the semiconductor sector from Korea's 52-hour work week system. The country's work week system currently limits workers to 40 regular hours and 12 overtime hours a week. The semiconductor law failed to pass last year as there were disagreements among the rival parties, and other discussions may include the pension reform as well as an extra budget. Earlier in the day, PPP floor leader Kwon Sung-dong stressed the Semiconductor Special Act, including the 52-hour workweek exemption, must be approved this month, expressing hopes for bipartisan cooperation from DP leader Lee Jae-myung at the four-way talks today. However, there seems to be little hope for agreements on that front. A DP official reportedly told Yonhap News Agency that the party will neither make concessions on the semiconductor law nor the pension reform. A PPP official also viewed the meeting to bear not many fruits unless the DP takes a more cooperative attitude. One of the DP's key demands to the PPP and the government is coming up with a supplementary budget to revive the economy and improve the livelihood of the nation's people.
That's right, which is what the DP is. One of the things that DP is pushing for is 250,000 won in vouchers for everybody here in the country. I think initially it was like 300,000. They brought it down to 250,000. Which is about less than 200 US, like $175 or something like that. But again, the PPP very much against that. They're saying that's going to lead to inflation, further increasing the consumer prices. Speaking of prices, let's move on to the economy. South Korea's producer prices rose at their fastest pace in 17 months in January. This driven by rising global oil prices and higher costs for agricultural and industrial goods. The increase is expected to increase the consumer inflation in the coming months. Jihee, let's get some figures here.
Right. According to the Bank of Korea's data released on Thursday, the producer price index for January climbed by 0.6% from the previous month, reaching 120.18 based on the 2020 standard of 100. Now, this marks the third consecutive month of increases and the steepest rise since August 2022. And on a year-on-year basis, producer prices were up 1.7%, extending an 18-month streak of gains. And by category, agricultural, forestry, and fisheries products rose sharply, reflecting supply shortages, while industrial goods, including petroleum and metal products, also registered notable increases driven by higher raw material prices. Service sector costs edged up, led by business support and telecommunications services. Meanwhile, prices in utilities such as electricity and gas remained largely flat. Key items contributing to the surge included fuel products like diesel and gasoline, along with fresh produce such as strawberries and citrus. In contrast, pork prices and certain financial service fees declined. And the Bank of Korea noted that the increase in producer prices will likely affect consumer prices with a bit of a time lag. However, the extent and timing will vary depending on corporate pricing strategies and market conditions. The central bank is closely monitoring global energy prices, currency movements, and potential adjustments to domestic utility fees, which could further impact inflation trends. And the domestic supply price index, which measures the cost of both locally produced and imported goods, also rose by 0.6% in January, reflecting broad price pressures across raw materials, as well as intermediate and finished goods. With supply costs rising for 4 consecutive months now, concerns persist that the upward momentum in production costs could provide upward pressure as well to consumer inflation, posing challenges to price stability.
That's right. We're now going to go over to the country's business sentiment, which, let's face it, I can't remember the last time business sentiment was above 100, which means optimists outweigh pessimists. It hasn't been looking good for months and months and months, maybe years here. Predictions for March also looking quite negative. So let's get the details of this.
Right. South Korea's business sentiment has been and remains negative. According to the Federation of Korean Industries on Thursday, which released its monthly poll of the nation's top 600 companies, that is by sales figures, said the business survey index for March stands at 90.8. BSI, as you said, SJ, below 100 means pessimists outnumber optimists. A reading above 100 means there are more optimists than pessimists. Things have been negative for 3 years now, as the index stood beneath 100 for 36 straight months since April 2022. Back in April 2022, it was 99.1. And when we look at the BSI for the first quarter of this year, it's predicted at 87.5. That's the lowest since the first quarter of 2009. And that's during the aftermath of the global financial crisis. Back then, it was 64.7. So it's looking pretty bad. Now, by sector, the business sentiment for the manufacturing industry was 95.1 for next month, for non-manufacturing at 86.3. Among the manufacturing sector, only machinery and tech sectors had positive outlooks, whereas automobile and transportation equipment fields were negative, especially with impacts expected by U.S. President Donald Trump's tariffs. I think Ji will deal with that in a bit. The pessimistic outlook, according to experts, is attributed to weak consumer spending and growing uncertainties overseas. An official at the Federation of Korean Industries said, quote, with prolonged sluggishness in consumption and investment, the economy faces a double whammy involving domestic demand and exports due to uncertainty regarding inflation and heightened external risks. And with that, stressing the need for a closer public-private partnership system to spur domestic investment, such as through the expansion of those subject to tax reductions, as well as the need for closer cooperation to reduce tariff and trade risks.
So you look at what's leading to some of the pessimistic outlook, and so I mentioned it's one of the things that attributing is the weak consumer spending, right? I mean, which we've been seeing weak consumer spending for many, many, many months right now, which is why the main opposition Democratic Party is pushing for this voucher plan. But while it is true that if you are giving out these vouchers to everybody and everyone's kind of, you're going to use it, right? You're forced to use that put that into the local economy. Sure, you're injecting it, but also that does also lead to quite a bit of inflation. We saw that during the COVID-19 pandemic. The U.S., I think, is a very good example of what happens when you give out too much money. But the argument being made by the DP is $250,000 is not exactly a lot, where it's going to lead to significant inflation. But people are not spending. Things are just way too expensive. People are not dining out right now. Goodness, burgers. Fast food burgers are so expensive, and you add delivery charges to that. Who wants to order that anymore, right? It's pretty tough right now. But on top of all things, let's put a cherry on top here. South Korea's labor market. Let's talk about the job market here. Also showing signs of strain. The number of newly created jobs fell to its lowest level on record in the third quarter of last year. The manufacturing and construction sector, again, particularly affected by all of this. Ji, let's get more on this.
Right, so according to Statistics Korea's data released earlier today, the share of newly hired workers within wage jobs dropped to 28% in the third quarter of 2024, recording the lowest since the data collection began in 2018. Now, this marks the second consecutive year of decline as well. The total number of newly filled positions stood at 5.83 million, down over 200,000 from the previous year. Economic slowdown, sluggish domestic demand, and cautious hiring practices have led to this contraction in new employment opportunities. Manufacturing, which holds the largest share of total jobs, saw its new hiring rate fall below 20% for the first time, reflecting the sector's weak job creation capacity, particularly as the semiconductor industry rebounds with limited labor demand. The construction industry's new hiring rate also slipped from 53% to 50.4% amid prolonged downturns in the sector as well. And service industries tied to domestic consumption, such as wholesale, retail, and food services, continued their downward trend in hiring as well. And across all age groups, new hiring rates hit record lows. Youth in their 20s and younger saw their hiring rate fall to 48%, while rates for those in their 30s to 60s also dropped, indicating widespread challenges in securing new jobs across the workforce.
So the phenomenon we're seeing right now is because there's limited job opportunities, right? Openings for jobs. If you're a corporation, right, and you have an option and you have limited spots to fill in your workforce, are you willing to hire someone who has limited experience, who has a lot of experience, right? And so what they're looking at is now, I think from what I understand, this is holds true in the United States as well. The hiring, they're looking for people with at least 10 years of experience in the new hires. 10 years is a lot, ladies and gentlemen, right? I mean, going to most people these days, they go to college and they go to grad school and things like that. And then for men here in South Korea, they go to the military, right? And by then, when you're trying to get a job here, when they're looking for people with at least 10 years of experience, it is hard to get jobs. Right? And so, which is why I think when we looked at the job numbers not too long ago, we did see an increase in job hires for those in their 40s, I think it was, 30s and 40s, because if you're in your 30s and 40s, you have about 10 years of experience in place. They're not hiring young kids with limited experiences. And as a employer, as I guess in the perspective of a management, it does make sense. But it just means that there's not enough jobs available right now. And all of this put together seems to be that there is some sort of recession going on in this country. But the R word is not being mentioned right now for some reason. We're going to move on to some ambitious plans announced by the South Korean government earlier today regarding the AI sector. Everyone's driven towards that sector. The aim is to make the country one of the top 3 AI powerhouses. So let's get more on this.
Right. We just heard from Ji about the low labor figures. I don't know if this could be good news for the labor market as well, or bad news, because every time we talk about AI, it could mean more jobs, but also it could mean...
So the suspense is killing me right now. The suspense is killing me. Is this going to be good news or bad news?
I don't know. So I wrote in the lead that those are ambitious plans and we're aiming to become one of the top 3 AI powerhouses, but listening to Ji's figures, I don't know anymore. But talking about the top 3 AI powerhouses, who are the current top two in the field.
You mean the top two economies too, right?
Right.
The U.S. and China probably.
Exactly. So if we say Korea wants to be one of the top three, probably we want to be the third.
Yeah.
So global AI power rankings by Stanford University Human-Centered Artificial Intelligence actually, as of 2024, says that it's the U.S. followed by China, the U.K., India, the United Arab Emirates, France, and then South Korea comes in seventh when it comes to the leaders in the AI market, followed by Germany, Japan, and Singapore. But as I said, Korea wants to go further up on the list to become one of the top three AI leaders. Acting President Choi Sang-mok unveiled a comprehensive plan to speed up Korea's development in the AI field at the third National Artificial Intelligence Committee meeting on Thursday. One of the major ambitious plans was the creation of a world-class artificial intelligence model, or an LLM, large-scale language model. Simply said, Korea is looking to develop its own ChatGPT. And I was actually talking to a friend yesterday about ChatGPT. I don't really use ChatGPT that much, and I kind of always feel a little nervous when I type in something in there. I don't know, I kind of feel that my information is going out there. And
so didn't you give your bank account to TikTok last year?
Oh no, don't remind me of that. Anyways, so I think it would be great to have a Korean version of ChatGPT. Maybe my information will be among Koreans. Anyway, Choi Sang-mok said, quote, "We must develop a globally competitive AI model while simultaneously securing top-tier talent, building necessary infrastructure, and promoting AI industrialization on a comprehensive scale. And for that, it will need lots of investment, R&D, and a competent team. In fact, an AI national elite team is to be set up, with the government looking to recruit talented researchers domestically and from abroad." The acting president highlighted that now is a critical time for the public and private sector to work hand in hand to quickly boost the nation's AI capabilities and reach up the ladder to turn into one of the top three AI powerhouses in the world. So it looks like they're going to recruit in Korea and abroad. So listeners, listen up. And 1 trillion won, or $695 million are to be invested in R&D, 2 trillion won for a national AI computing center. 2 trillion won, so that would be, I didn't put the US dollars
like
here, but around 1,000, 1.3 billion.
Yeah.
Thank you, SJ. Now, the AI center is expected to launch in 2027, but a related service is going to start this year for timely support for local businesses and researchers.
Okay, so again, I mean, this is the reason why there was a lot of backlash when the government initially decided to cut funding for R&D, right? I mean, they're trying to reverse this, and it's good that they're trying to reverse this right now. But so the Science Ministry, in regards to this plan, said the government aims to acquire thousands of GPUs in the coming months here. Tell us more about this.
Sure. The Ministry of Science and ICT said in a press release this Thursday, also regarding this plan, that it will secure 18,000 GPUs, which are high-performance graphics processing units, in a bid to upgrade the country's AI computing skills. That's some 10,000 GPUs this year and an additional 8,000 by June next year. Now, these are needed for the new National AI Computing Center that I mentioned earlier and Korea's 6th supercomputer, respectively. GPUs are essential to AI as they bring top-tier performance for AI training and inference. GPUs handle a broad range of algorithms and tasks. Now, according to Science Minister Yoo Sang-im, it's not only companies that are aspiring to become leaders in the AI fields, but it's countries as a whole. Therefore, the government aims to make a full-scale and swift investment to boost the AI computing infrastructure and foster talents in the field. And it's not only Korea that's trying to speed up its AI development, of course. The US, France, and also the European Union have recently announced big investment plans. So it's going to be a tough competition, but let's do hope for Korea's fast and detailed workforce to make the sector another growth engine for the country.
Yeah, and the big thing is, I mean, this is not a short-term plan. This is a long-term plan, right? And so a lot of the kids, middle school kids, high school kids moving up, looking into what they're going to study in university and things like that. More and more people they need to get into the sciences. They need to more and more need to go into technology sector. But I don't know if that the numbers I don't have the exact figures here, but from what I understand, the less and less kids are actually going into sciences and technology and engineering these days. And so somehow they need to foster that too. U.S. President Donald Trump, we've been talking a lot about him, announced that new tariffs targeting the automobiles, semiconductors, and pharmaceuticals, and also timber, wood, would be unveiled within the next month. The move signals a continuation of Trump's aggressive trade policies, which could have significant implications for U.S. trading partners, including, of course, us here in South Korea. Jihee, you're going to wrap us up. Let's get the latest on this.
Right, so speaking at an investment conference in Miami on Wednesday, President Trump revealed that his administration is finalizing plans to introduce tariffs targeting a range of goods, including automobiles and semiconductors, which are both vital to South Korea's economy. Trump emphasized that the tariffs would encourage foreign manufacturers to relocate production to the United States and claimed they would generate significant revenue for the U.S. government. Trump had previously suggested that auto tariffs could be announced by early April, but his latest comments hint that the tariffs on cars, semiconductors, and other sectors may come even sooner. And the president also stressed that tariff revenues contributed to efforts to balance the federal budget while encouraging foreign companies to expand their operations once again in the U.S. And in addition to trade policy, Trump highlighted his administration's plans to quickly replenish the Strategic Petroleum Reserve as well, which was drawn down during the Biden administration to stabilize fuel prices. And he also once again pointed to his crackdown on illegal immigration, urging European nations to adopt similarly tough policies to prevent what he described as harmful impacts on their societies.
Yeah, again, I mean, these tariffs are going to be massive. They're looking at 25%, right? And I think initially he was supposed to announce it on April 1st, but I think he's superstitious, he thinks it's something along the lines of, I'm a bit superstitious, I'm going to announce this on April 2nd. But 25% tariffs on, let's say, Hyundai cars is going to be devastating, right? But the thing is, this is going down to the consumers. I mean, when you're looking at trying to lower the inflation, I don't know how this helps. And he does keep mentioning William McKinley. William McKinley is not necessarily the most memorable president. I think he's more known for, unfortunately, being assassinated during his term. But he was pushing for these massive tariffs during his administration. That actually led to a huge slowdown in U.S.'s economy, and everyone. And he's kind of comparing that in a positive way, but everyone is kind of comparing that in a negative way. So we'll have to see. April seems far away, but it's going to come very quickly. We're almost at the end of February. Guys, thank you very much for your reports. Have a safe rest of the week. We'll see you guys again.
Thank you.
You can listen to Korea Now with me, SJ Lee, by downloading the Arirang Radio application or tune in online by visiting www.arirangradio.com. So make sure you tune in Mondays through Fridays, 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. Korea time.